David, let's start with you. Give us the headline details then.
Yeah, well, Erik ten Hag, Mark, is going to be the new permanent manager of Manchester United, subject to them finishing off the formalities of this appointment, which means putting everything in writing. It might not be that quick because Erik ten Hag is a stickler for detail and he'll want everything in the contract to be absolutely spot on. But I think now they're at a point where it is definitely going to get done. They need to cross the T's, dot the I's, talk about timings of announcements and things like that to be respectful to Ajax, strike an agreement with Ajax to release him from his contract there. But the top line is that Manchester United now have a verbal agreement in principle with Erik ten Hag for him to take over. And that basically brings to an end their managerial recruitment process, which we've reported on since the end of January. And I can talk you through that in due course. And it's going to be a contract running up to 4 years. They still need to agree the backroom staff and a number of other issues. But yeah, this is now almost at an end. It's pretty much a done deal.
But there's still some stuff to iron out to put in the contract.
Yeah, there will be a lot to discuss around power, around responsibility, around lines of authority and communication, who does what place Ten Hag takes in the decision-making process, players coming in and out, budgets, coaching staff, severance agreements, if it ever comes to that, just making sure that everything is spot on for Erik ten Hag. He tends to read over his contracts, pour over it in fine detail wherever he's been. And it's going to be no different on this occasion. And I think the way things have gone for Manchester United in recent times, the feeling among the fans is that that's for the best. He's doing the right thing. He wants to get this right and maximize his chances of succeeding at a club where most other managers since Sir Alex Ferguson have failed. Accusations that the hierarchy and the structures and processes are a little bit dysfunctional. So if he's going to take this job and do it well, he wants it to be right. And that's why the contract needs to be bang on.
That's what I was going to say to you, Carl. I mean, it might take you 2 years to sort this contract out if they're trying to untangle the hierarchical structure and the lines of communication.
Yes, this is a slightly confusing one. Last year, Laurie Whitwell did a fantastic article on John Murtough and Nicky Butt and their position in the Manchester United hierarchy, and he did a fantastic family tree. And then within, I think, 2 days, he had to update it because Nicky Butt quite quickly left. So Manchester United, there is a high level of, if you want to call it nice, you can call it bureaucracy. If you want to be not nice, you can probably call it dysfunction. And I think trying to figure out how Ten Hag will fit into that will be quite interesting. I've often described Manchester United as a bit of a Gordian knot. And obviously the simplest way to do that is to just whip out your sword, cut it up and untangle the whole mess. Whereas I think what Ten Hag will most likely do and what he will most likely argue for in his contract is to be done with the entire tangled mess and get a brand new rope.
Adam?
Well, it's a great time, I think, for him to be coming in. I know some people will look at it and think, the club's on its knees, but I think for a coach, that's actually an advantage because expectations are so low. I mean, at the moment, said on the podcast the other day that Man United play Norwich at home on Saturday, and I don't think anyone thinks 100% Man United will win that game. So he comes into a situation that I think makes him look, like the answer, almost a bit of a savior complex around the situation. But I do think it's interesting. A lot of the reporting over the last week or so has been around this idea of, will Erik ten Hag get the power in recruitment, in getting players out of a club? And it's an interesting one because we've also been told for years how Ajax is so well run in terms of having a sporting director and a hands-on chief executive, that the club makes structural decisions. That's not that Erik ten Hag didn't make decisions at Ajax, but there was a clear structure behind him that meant he could get on with doing the coaching. So all of a sudden, for the idea of Ten Hag being, I want to be this, almost Ferguson style hands-on manager that has control of this. Seems quite different. And also bearing in mind, United now have football director in John Murtagh. They're about to hire a deputy football director. They've got Darren Fletcher as technical secretary. And we still don't know what's going on with Ralph Rangnick in terms of this consultancy agreement that he's got for the next 2 years. So, and then you add on to all of that, the scouts, the data analysts. I just wonder what it is exactly that Ten Hag wants control of or this big say into. Is it just sign off, David, really, that he's not going to have players thrust upon him that he wouldn't choose? But to be fair, I don't think that's been a problem at United. Generally, managers have had players that they've asked for.
Yeah, I don't know the precise ins and outs of it, but I think there will be a lot of protection around where he has his say and, I don't know, final sign-offs and vetoes on recruitment, as opposed to he's in control of it all. You're right. The structure at Ajax and United's quite different. And I mean, he actually comes relatively low maintenance. We don't think he's going to bring in many members of backroom staff. He's going to collaborate with Manchester United on who they're going to appoint, a lot of Premier League experience. And I suppose the recruitment process would actually work, in theory, relatively smoothly with him, given his background. I think it's just securities and making sure that everything that they talk about now, which I'm sure will be very flattering for Ten Hag in these negotiations, because Manchester United want him, is actually delivered over the course of that contract, and it's not ripped up or they go on a different path during the course of that tenure. And if they do, he has some written guarantees to fall back on.
I think there's an interesting parallel to be made to the last Dutch manager that arrived at Manchester United. So Louis van Gaal arrived, and very much throughout his career, Van Gaal had a reputation of being a coach and very much taking control of training. And then when he arrived at Manchester United, he, as written in his book, essentially wished to become more of an English manager and wished to have more of that control. And he stopped taking training to the same degree he did at previous clubs, and then tried to become a more Ferguson-esque United-style figure in terms of control. I think that is less likely to be the case with Ten Hag. I think one of the big questions with everything that goes on here is, and I think one of the big concerns of Manchester United fans is, well, you keep saying Ten Hag is a fantastic coach. Manchester United did more than a fantastic coach, because there's just so much strangeness in that footballing environment. And I think what control perhaps is a misnomer of a word. I think the idea is essentially Ten Hag possibly, and David, you please correct me, Ten Hag's probably looking in his contract for reassurances that he can focus on doing his job, and the things that he's good at, which is being a very, very good football coach, and probably wants those sort of reassurances that whatever the hierarchy is, whatever the family tree is around him, allows him to focus on doing the things he's known for, which is meticulous attention to detail on the training field.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and it's more a presumption, but I assume that is more the direction of travel for him, but also just where he fits into those wider decisions, because I think perhaps United went too far the other way with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, with this perception from outside that although he had a clear say in matters, for example, and this is hypothetical, how much of a say did he have in the signing of Cristiano Ronaldo? And will Erik Ten Hag be told, you are having a Ronaldo, we've decided, we've got the opportunity, we can't let it slip, he's coming in, and then you're stuck with him? Or does Ten Hag get to say, no, I am fundamental to that decision-making process and my voice carries as much weight as others? Adam, I must stress that's not something I know is happening, but it would strike me as being a logical kind of area to cover off.
Any idea what he wants to do with Ronaldo?
No. But I do think in the negotiations, I do think in the interview process and the talks that United have with their candidates, and Mark, I can go over that process as well if you want, the control over incomings and outgoings and building the squad for next season and beyond was a clear area of discussion.
Well, as we've discussed many times, Adam, having control over outgoings strikes me as important as having control over incomings, on the basis that hardly anybody seems to go out of Manchester United. And actually, that's the problem. So the club have been obsessed with maximizing value of every single player to the extent that they keep renewing contracts and so on and so forth. Whereas if the head coach is going, look, I have no need for player X, and actually I'm going to use player Z from the under 23s as the cover for a first teamer rather than player X, we can move player X on. And actually that to me strikes me as where one of the biggest problems has been at Manchester United, which, as Rangnick himself said, then left him with a squad of about 83 to try and keep happy.
Yeah, I think there's definitely been a lack of ruthlessness around elements of the squad over the last few years. And I think that probably extends to both starting players and players that you may sort of consider to be part of the squad. I think that is going to change this summer just because of the contract situation. You're going to have Pogba go, you're going to have Lingard go, Juan Mata will go, Phil Jones will surely go, Bailly will surely go. I mean, players you almost forget are at Man United to a certain extent over the last few months.
Andreas Pereira,
yeah. Martial, I don't know. I'm now just remembering players that I'd forgotten had played for them. Cavani will go. Ronaldo's a maybe. I mean, they can't get rid of everyone in one summer, because to replace them for the standard of if you want to be competing for the top four in the Premier League, each signing these days is £30 million plus. So they can't get rid of everyone, even though at the moment it feels like I think a lot of Manchester United fans probably have that scorched earth policy of I really don't like this group. I don't care if any of them are here next season, right? I think there is a sense of that around the state. I think it's why some fans are almost supporting this idea to knock down Old Trafford. That's how fed up they are of the situation and rebuild it. It's like, just knock it all down, start again, get a new manager, and we'll be all right in August. So, yeah, it's where that I think is super appealing for a new manager like Ten Hag is it's a very rare opportunity at a big club to really reshape the squad in your own image. And there's going to be a lot of pressure this summer on Richard Arnold in his first summer as CEO to get that right for the new manager, because if this managerial appointment goes wrong, this decade that it's been since Ferguson retired will become 15 years almost on the base of what they do this summer.
This is not going to be an overnight job that Erik Ten Hag is going to throw them back into contention next season for the biggest trophies in world football. This is a little bit root and branch, and it may be why he was in part installed, or is going to be, as the head coach. And when you look at that structure, the one person we haven't mentioned in this is Joel Glazer, who's the most powerful person in that family tree. All decisions, especially the major ones, have to be deferred to him. And around recruitment, you speak to some in the game who say he has a real liking for the big names, players he's heard of, sort of stars of the game. Saw Ronaldo come in. Sancho was obviously a massive name. Varane as well, which hasn't been an amazing success so far. And I think one of the most important things going forward is to see how much control John Murtough, Darren Fletcher can wrestle from this. Richard Arnold, even as chief executive, and bring more power onto the ground in Manchester and London, and whether they can wrestle a little bit more from Joel Glazer, because you hear resoundingly from people you speak to that too much of it resides with him. And I don't say that in an offensive way, but clearly it's not the way that some of the best teams in Europe are working, in terms of Manchester City springs to mind immediately, Liverpool too. And if United want to be best in class, they have to rethink a little bit that dynamic between ownership and the expertise that's been appointed by the ownership to run the club.